All right, Alex, welcome to the Chasing Curiosity Pod. Really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me, man. It's always great to talk shop.
I'd love for this to be just kind of a brand building masterclass and how you've taken your company Hostage Tape from zero to where it's at now, which is absolutely incredible what you've built. In order to get there, I think we have to start with, why is this a problem for anybody? Why would anybody want to use your product?
Right. Well, and that's the key, right? Anytime you're starting a new company, a new business, a great place to start from is by solving a problem, right? So anybody listening out there, if you're trying to start something and you want to build something, try to find a problem in your life, right, that you can actually solve. It's always the best place to start from. So it really comes down to this. There's 128 million households in the US, and over 71% of them mouth breathe at night. And we shouldn't be mouth breathing at all. And for some reason, the population, especially here in the US, we've grown accustomed to mouth breathing as we get older, right? And I can talk a little bit about the science behind it, but mouth breathing is really bad for us. We shouldn't be mouth breathing at all. We should be breathing through our nose, right? Our mouth is for talking or eating, and it's not for breathing. It's not supposed to be. And so for me, I went through a really interesting life journey, really kind of a hero's journey, to discover that I was mouth breathing and I was snoring like a chainsaw, pushed my wife into the other bedroom for years, created resentment, issues in our marriage. We went through divorce, just all sorts of different things. And I went down this rabbit hole. I read James Nestor's book, Breath, where he talks about this experiment. And there's this famous experiment where they go to Stanford Medical Center, and for 10 days, they plug their nose. And over those 10 days, they develop snoring, sleep apnea, blood oxygen through the floor. And then after 10 days, they unplugged their nose, they mouth taped, and everything went away in one day. So for me, that was kind of the light bulb moment of, holy crap. So you're telling me, right? And I've been an athlete my whole life. You know, you can see on my wall here, I've got all these jerseys. I was a football player my whole life, and my coaches never taught us this. Like, they just didn't teach us the dangers of mouth breathing and the benefits of nose breathing. And so it was completely foreign to me. And I think it's foreign to most of us here in the US because it's just lost. They just don't teach it anymore. Like, if you go to yoga, they'll teach it. If you've ever gone into yoga, they talk about nose breathing, keeping your mouth shut. And I always thought it was kind of woo-woo. I didn't believe it. And so when I read that, I went, whoa. So then I discovered mouth taping. And when I discovered mouth taping as an entrepreneur, I went, there's a business here. And I was inspired at the time by Liquid Death, what Mike had done with Liquid Death and the brand. And so I knew in that moment that, okay, I've got a problem that I can solve. And then the question is, can I actually build a brand around this? Do I actually have product market fit that we can get more into? But it was at that moment that I knew, all right, I've got something. And then that's really where Hostage Tape was born.
And what made you pick up James Nestor's book at that time? That was a very influential book for myself as well.
So it's a phenomenal read for anybody out there. Super easy read too. It's not like it's overly complex. Very easy read. So like any problem, any man that's our age, or anybody in general, when you have a problem, you go into Google, you start looking for things. And you start looking for how to stop snoring, how to sleep better. Why am I not sleeping? And then you start discovering all these different rabbit holes. And I went on to Amazon and I bought mouth guards. You look for pillows, you look for all these other things that you think might help sleep. None of them worked. Especially the mouth guard. There's these mouth guards you can get that try to like push your jaw forward and do things. And they don't really work. They just hurt. Kept your mouth open. You drool on your pillow. And then I kept going. I kept digging. And then I found this. It was an excerpt from the book that he wrote talking about mouth breathing and how the mouth breathing was the issue. That was the real issue behind his snoring and why he was just getting terrible sleep. And so reading that and then getting the book and then realizing, oh my God, I've been mouth breathing my whole life and didn't even know it, you know? And In fact, when you mouth breathe, one of the really odd side effects of it is it actually causes issues with your teeth. So when you mouth breathe, you dry out the saliva, and the good bacteria goes away. Bad bacteria forms, eats away at the enamel, creates cavities, bad breath, all sorts of awful stuff in your teeth. And as a kid, I always had issues with my teeth, like pitting, cavities in my teeth, and my dentist could never figure out why. And at this point, back in the 80s, I think a lot of like traditional dentists weren't really on the mouth breathing, nose breathing train. They weren't really taught that in their dental school. Whereas now, a lot more holistic dentists, natural dentists, they fully understand mouth breathing, nose breathing. They can identify people, and they encourage people to keep their mouth shut. And so at the time, my dentist didn't know this. And so now, looking back, like that was why I had issues with my teeth for so many years as a kid. It was because I was mouth breathing since I was a little guy.
Yeah, it's a fantastic book, and I highly recommend everybody read it as well. I'll list it in the show notes. People can easily find it. I believe it's in that book that they talk about the study they do on the rhesus monkeys, where they plug up the monkey's nose for whatever time frame it was, and the just deformity of the shape, how the shape of the face changes because of mouth breathing, makes breathing harder. They get sick more often, and just really exemplifies all the issues that mouth breathing does that a lot of people don't understand how big of a deal it is. Like,
Here,
to your point,
I'll explain just a couple of the simple things, because I'm sure at this point,
please.
anybody listening or watching is going, okay, but really? So it comes down to a couple of really simple things. Number one is you're actually getting more oxygen, believe it or not. And it sounds counterintuitive. You think, but I can get more air in my mouth. Why does it matter? How is this different than this? Okay, here's why. It comes down to this principle in our bodies. It's called the Bohr effect. It's really boring. It's called the Bohr effect, ironically. So our body has an exchange of CO2 and oxygen, 1-for-1. So when oxygen comes in, CO2 goes out. Oxygen, CO2. Okay. So what that says is when we have more CO2 in our body can pull in oxygen more efficiently and better to be used as energy. So when we mouth breathe, we're exhaling more CO2 than we should be. So then we have less CO2 in the body to be able to convert oxygen into the body. When we keep it shut, now we're exhaling less. So we have more CO2 in the body. Thus, more of the oxygen that comes in now can get deployed throughout the body. That's the simplest way to think about it and go, okay, that makes sense, right? And then number two, when you breathe through your nose, you trigger the release of nitric oxide. And nitric oxide is a vasodilator. It helps open up the blood vessels and encourage blood flow, that oxygen throughout the body. And then the third one is the nose is a filter. It's filtering out all the stuff, all the garbage in the air. It's cleaning it, filtering it, and it's warming and humidifying it. Our lungs like clean, warm, humid air, right, to be pulled in. When we breathe through our mouth, it's dry, it's dirty, it's cold. That oxygen doesn't get translated into our body as well that way. So some really simple ways to think about it so that you can go, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, it really is fascinating. Just the slight difference of where you're breathing in and how big of a difference it makes in the body. And so we've identified a problem. And how do we get to, your first ideation, first MVP of what you want to bring to the market?
Yeah. So, okay, let's talk about this, because this was the dilemma that I had. And this is the dilemma that a lot of people have is you come up with an idea. One of the hardest parts, the hardest steps that most people have is coming up with an idea and then actually taking the next step. That's probably one of the hardest phases for people to get through, because you have all this doubt. You have all this fear of, well, there's gotta be somebody else out there that did it. There's gotta be another idea out there, or maybe somebody has a patent on it, or maybe you make up all these excuses in your mind of why you probably aren't going to succeed. And so for me, I'm looking at this thinking, because when I mouth tape for the first time, I just went on Amazon and I bought, when you read the book, they talk about 3M tape, micropore tape. There's obviously lots of tape that you can use. Tape is essentially a commodity. right? Everybody makes it. It's all over the place. You could put Scotch tape on your mouth, right? And try it. Now, it's probably not going to work very well for most of us, but you still could theoretically. So you think about that and you go, well, how am I going to differentiate? How am I going to build a brand around a commodity that you could get anywhere? And then you start telling yourself, well, this isn't going to work then. I don't know what kind of moat I can build. I don't know how I can actually inspire other people to pay a premium for this product if they could maybe just go buy something at the pharmacy really cheap, right? That's what's going through my head. And then, so what I did is I went, okay, wait a minute. Well, let's identify the other problems, because really there's always a couple of key problems that you're trying to solve. So if you lean in on those, you identify what those issues are that maybe the commodity or the regular products out there doesn't do very well, then you can lean in on that. So I knew that for most men, they have facial hair. Like you have a lot of facial hair, and most regular tapes don't work too well when it's rigid tape. It doesn't work well with facial hair. And so that was one of the biggest knocks that a lot of people had, which is mouth taping in general as a man. And it doesn't look so cool. Not as convenient, right? So I went, okay, I'm going to create something that works great with facial hair. It looks cool, because let's be honest, who's inspired to go to the pharmacy and pick up 3M micropore tape? It sounds really boring. Doesn't sound inspiring at all. It doesn't make most men go, that sounds cool, I'm going to do that. Not at all. In fact, you kind of go, yeah, I'm not doing that. There's no story there. There's nothing that's going to inspire you and have an emotional connection to you for you to decide, I'm going to do this completely foreign, crazy sounding idea. So I knew, okay, I'm going to solve these key issues, and I'm going to niche down, right? That's another important thing, is many times people, they try to go too broad. They want to please everybody. And you have to look at your market and go, who am I trying to solve a problem for? And yes, you have to make sure there is a big enough TAM, right? There's a big enough market there that you can actually address, but still you're attracting those people, because eventually what happens is if you really attack that market and you do a great job, your market's going to expand naturally. So I went, okay, I'm going to go after men, middle-aged men just like me that have facial hair, because in this space, that's most of the people who have this issue anyways. So I knew, all right, very specific, very targeted. And I was inspired by Liquid Death, right? Liquid Death, what they did. It's water. It's the biggest commodity on the planet. But what I loved about it was, like, you could drink water out of the faucet. You could go buy regular bottled water by there are 100 different brands, right? You go into the grocery store, you go to the gas station, and there's too many to count. You look at it and you're like, wow, I don't know. But Liquid Death, the brand that they made makes you feel cool. I feel cool drinking Liquid Death. It inspires me to grab a Liquid Death, to drink it. It's great water, by the way. It's not like it's bad water. It's great water. So while being great and having this brand of, wow, this makes me feel really cool, I like it. That's what brands do. That's what a great brand does. It elicits a feeling, an emotion of why you're attracted to the brand, why you use that brand, why you buy it. And so I knew, okay, we have to build a brand around this. That's my moat. And I'll never forget, I was inspired also by, so Moise Ali, he's the famous founder of Native Deodorant. He had talked about this concept of going into Target, walking down the aisles, and you see a wall of white on a category that there's an opportunity there to stand out. Because then you know, all right, there's a market there for that. It's big enough. But then I want to stand out, because in this day and age, attention is the currency. You have to get people's attention. And with social media, right, everything we do in e-commerce is we're using Facebook ads, Google ads, all that. You have to be able to get people's attention. So I knew, okay, polarity. I'm going to create polarity, right? And that's the mark of a great brand. A great brand is polarizing. Not everybody's going to like it, and that's okay. So I knew that if I'm going to pick a brand, it's got to be crazy. It's got to be out there. It's got to get your attention. And at the time, I didn't know that I was going to call it hostage tape. But this idea of mouth taping was so life-changing because for me, who has been a mouth breather my whole life, and I mouth taped, I woke up, I felt like a teenager. I felt like my son, who's 14, just the amount of energy I had. So I knew right there that I was on to something just because of how life-changing and simple it was. And so at the time, my wife and I we were separated. We were divorced. So we weren't living in the same house. Whenever the kids were with me, I would tell them, hey, kids, I'm going to warn you. If you bust into the room at night and you see me, I'm going to warn you, it's going to look like I'm being held hostage. So don't freak out. Because when you wear tape on your mouth, you look like you're a hostage. You look kind of funny. And when people see it for the first time, they are like, what are you doing? You look ridiculous. But then I realized, well, that's it. Because at the end of the day, we're actually tapping into this core emotion people feel. People feel held hostage by poor sleep or their partner, and they don't know what to do. So don't let bad sleep hold you hostage. That was then when I went, okay, that's it. And then I went to my now business partner, Ben, he's the genius behind all of the branding. I said, dude, this is what I want to do. And he was like, I love it. Let's do it. Because he was looking at mouth taping too. Mm-hmm. And then we just knew hostage tape. Like we were going to get people to stop the scroll. I knew people were going to see it and go, they were either going to love it because they understood we weren't taking ourselves too seriously, but so they would get it. And then there's going to be people who were outraged, like, oh my God, fire your marketing department. Like, what are you doing? This is awful, right? There's always going to be that, and that's okay. So when we figured that out, then I knew, okay, as long as we can stay the course and have the balls to like lean in to hostage tape, then I knew we'd be able to make it, right? And that was scary. That's the scary part, right? Is realizing that you have this product. Do you have a moat? Is it defensible? And if you're going to do it, you're going to go all in. Is it actually going to work and be successful, right? And so that was what I had to get through and get over, and eventually did. And now we're here. And so then when I was really developing the product too, you asked about that. It probably took me like 6 months. 6 months of figuring out the right kind of adhesive, but like just doing all the different product related fixes of like, all right, how do I tweak this? How do I do this? And then making sure we had the right, MVP that we were going to put out there for people to start buying. And ironically enough, the first version of the tape that we started shipping was the wrong tape. And so I had made a mistake with my manufacturer. So a good lesson to be learned here is, my dad always taught me, measure twice, cut once. Okay. And I didn't do a good enough job double checking and triple checking the details of the first order. So when I put it in, they made a mistake on how they cut the tape. And so when they cut it the wrong way. And if you've ever seen our tape, it's flexible. So it's this flexible fabric tape, right? Where it's very comfortable, right? Very flexible. And so they mixed that up, right? And it was actually then flexible the other way, and it shouldn't have been. It was supposed to be flexible this way instead of up and down. So then I went, oh, crap. And I didn't have a choice. Like I had to try to sell it. So we just tried to sell it and then had the next batch, version 2.0, being made. And then eventually, after a few months, swapped out 1.0 and then swapped in 2.0. So what we're selling now is actually hostage tape 2.0 because of the mistake I made not being as detail orientated with that first order. But yeah.
Yeah, it's a great founding story. Were there any moments where you were kind of backtracking or like second guessing? Is this hostage angle the angle we should be taking, or the moments of doubt?
Well, so very early on when you're doing Facebook ads, so I'd never done Facebook ads before, and here's another good lesson. So when you're an early founder, you really have to think about what moves the needle. And for me, I knew that Facebook and inventory is what moved the needle the most that I needed to focus on. So I wasn't going to hire it out. And for me, I'm just wired in a way that I'm going to learn how to do Facebook ads so I control it. I wasn't going to hire it out to an agency because I just didn't want to rely on spending all my money with some agency, just wondering, how's it going? Is it going right? Is it going? Because like our business was going to succeed or not based on Facebook ads. So I wasn't going to leave that variable into somebody else's hands. So I learned it. And learning Facebook ads is a super valuable skill that every founder should learn how to do. And you can learn it. So when I learned that, and then I started running Facebook ads, it was pretty bad early on because we just couldn't find the right type of ads. But when you're doing Facebook ads, what happens is you get all these comments that are bad. You're always going to get bad comments, right? And the unexperienced marketer thinks, oh my God. And you get nervous about like, what do I do? How do I respond to it? And what I eventually learned was, because there was a lot of it early on, because this whole concept of mount taping and then calling it hostage tape to boot was like this double whammy of mount taping's crazy and you called it that. What is wrong with you? So the comments were like just out of this world. And so I eventually just was like, I'm paying for these ads. So I'm just going to delete and block all these people who want to come on to the real estate I'm paying for. I'm paying for these. So when you're paying for ads, you're paying for those. So get rid of all the bad ones, delete them, block those people. And so that's what I learned early on, that just the sheer volume of people who were just doubters, and and you have a unseasoned pixel at that point that you're trying to get data. And so you're always going to go through that early woes of just trying to find your customers, who the customer is, so Facebook knows. And it was just a lot of, I call it FUD, right? Fear, uncertainty, doubt. So it was getting rid of all the FUD and deleting comments, removing comments, hiding comments, just because I'm paying for that, man. And I want the people who actually see this and understand the problem and go, oh, you know what? I'm having this problem. I didn't want it to scare anybody away, that it could help. So that was a very early on moment that no matter who you are, you look at that and it's going to scare you.
Yeah, I can imagine. 2 follow-ups to that. Do you have a good resource that you use to help you learn Facebook ads?
I did, yeah. So I used Ben Heath. So Ben Heath has a great YouTube channel for learning Facebook ads. And what I liked about what he did is he simplified a lot of the early basics that gives you a really good just foundation of how to understand Facebook ads and how to start running them and how to think about it. And so I started there and learned it, and then used it to build on my experience. And again, it took me probably 6 months to get to a point where I finally figured out the type of creative that worked. Early on, we couldn't find video that worked. Obviously, we didn't have any video other than like me, but we were trying to find just different recipes of videos that worked, and we just couldn't find it. So the only things that worked were static ads. And so then finally in January of 2020, was it 2023? Yeah, January 2023, we did a podcast where the guest host was talking about mount taping, his experience mount taping with 3M tape, and then how he's now using hostage tape and how big of a difference it made for him. So then we took that clip and we ran it, and then it crushed. And then we were like, that's it. So then we went heavy on podcasts, trying to find other people we could get taped to where they would talk about it, or just me getting on podcasts so that we could use it. And then that became the basis of a lot of our video ads, as well as just sort of the organic content that we started to try to make and create moving forward.
Then were you guys running ads as you were still designing the product, just to test to see what kind of potential demand there was for it? Or did you wait till you had the product ready to ship?
Once I knew we had a product to ship, like 1.0, we just started, right? And my advice to anybody out there would be, you can't wait till it's perfect, man. Certainly it depends upon what you have, but you have to be in the mindset of constantly iterating and updating and adapting. Because if you're waiting for it just to be just right and perfect, man, you're going to be waiting too long. So you have to start getting something out there, to start getting feedback, to know, is this right? Is this wrong? Do I need to adjust it? Do I need to adapt it? And we started right out of the gate. Once we knew we had it, we started marketing the ads. And then we quickly grew from, there was a point where the February, March of that following year, I spent $1 million a month on Facebook ads for probably maybe 2 months. I did that. And then certainly when you get that high in spend, you see the inefficiencies pretty fast. But I knew how it would affect everything down the line, because at least for us, I knew that we didn't need to be first order profitable, because we were a CAC to LTV type product. It's a product that it's a product that people use every day, every night, and they would keep buying, right? Consumable. So I knew that, all right, it's not a one sell product. I'm not selling a cold plunge that somebody buys once, right? There's a reason the cold plunge guys sell those things as much as they do. It's because they have to. And their cost of acquisition is ridiculously high, though, right? Whereas for us, it's a consumable. I know that it's not going to cost me near as much to acquire a customer, but I know that they're going to use it every day. I'm going to have them, if everything goes right, they'll be a customer with us for life. Because mouth breathing doesn't ever really go away as we get older. It's just something you have to kind of deal with and handle. So I knew that, okay, this is an LTV play, but I still need to have enough cash coming in. So I can't go too far and spend too much on acquisition, because then I got no cash flow coming in to continue to reinvest. So I had to find the balance there. So when I went to $1 million, I realized, okay, that's too much, too inefficient. And then I had to dial it back a little bit to find the right balance of efficiency, so I had enough cash flow that I can then keep reinvesting and then keep growing.
And where'd you get those initial funds from? Did you raise capital?
Nope, we're completely bootstrapped. And so the first company that I founded, so when I started the company, I was vesting the equity out in my first company. And it's the famous story of every entrepreneur. If you've never been through your first acquisition, you have these illusions of grandeur. You're going to sell your company. You're either going to make a lot of money, or you're going to get acquired, and then you're going to use the resources and the company behind that to then take your company to the next level. And a year in, you realize they don't want me. They want what I built. And then they're going to get rid of you. So then a year in, I'm like, okay, I see where this is going. So then I wanted to prepare on, what am I going to do next? And so then I took cash from that, and then bootstrapped, launched this, and then used it to get to where we are.
Wow, incredible. And out of that first, let's say, million in sales, what percentage of that was ads versus organic?
So most of it. I think most of our first year, we did about 900K. And I want to say, I mean, we were profitable, but barely, you know. I mean, our ROAS on everything was barely over a 1, which obviously is not, it's not great. It's not what you want to try to focus on. But in Charlie Tishner's words, that's okay. You don't want to always measure everything by ROAS. But yeah, it was not very efficient, not great. But again, we were learning, and I knew I had the cash and the runway to figure it out, and I had faith that we would figure it out, and then finally get more efficient and get to a point where, all right, we can continue to go.
Mm-hmm. If you had to go back and do it now, would you try and take more of a organic approach up front? Maybe, kind of documenting as you're building the product, stuff like that?
Not at all. Nope. Yeah, not
Why
at
is
all.
that?
Because, man, especially in this day and age, trying to grow organically is so impossible unless you have an audience already. I didn't have I'm nobody, right? In the eyes of the average person, the average consumer, I'm nobody. I didn't have an audience. So the only way that works is if you are a founder that has an audience already. You're sort of famous or whatever from some other part of your life, or you've started a company and you brought in like what Prime did. Those guys are genius at what they did. Logan Paul and KSI didn't start Prime. There's 2 guys that started it, and then they brought Logan and KSI in to be the faces, knowing that they had the audience to be able to truly scale it, right? And so that's the only other way that you could actually, like, I think, organically blow up and grow without spending money on ads, Facebook ads. I mean, certainly you could argue nowadays that with the virality of TikTok, you could maybe do it on TikTok. That window may be disappearing though, because TikTok is a bit of a dumpster fire for many brands. I would argue that there's a lot of brands that go viral on TikTok Shop and TikTok, but a lot of them aren't necessarily like big mainstay great brands. They might just have gotten viral and you don't ever see them anywhere else. Like you don't see Google ads, you don't see them on Facebook, you don't see them anywhere else. It's like, are those brands really going to make it? I don't know that they are, unless they're able to take that success and then build out success on Shopify, success on Google ads and Facebook ads and all these other areas, right? There's not that many of us that are great, big, strong D2C brands that have done well on TikTok Shop. We're still struggling to try to get it to work well.
Yeah, it does seem like a lot of flash in the pans per se, that they have a viral video and then you kind of never hear from them again. So something more sustainable is, cross-platform, like you said. Facebook ads obviously still the number one beast in the ad game.
Well, and think about it like this, man. Think about it like this. Like, if you were also really going to try to grow organically, dude, it would take so long. Like, what's your end game here? Do you have the time to do it? Do you have some other business, some other job that you're able to spend the time to just slowly grow organically? I don't think you can, man. I think you have to pay to play. I think in this day and age, especially on Meta, Facebook and Instagram, where that is still hands down the best place to market and to get a return if you're doing a D2C e-commerce type brand. You might debate that over the last quarter hasn't been great on Meta, but it's either way, it's still the best place.
And what was the moment that finally hit where you're like, oh shit, I think we got something here, and like kind of took it to the next level?
I think it was, well, so when I started the company, I've started 2 companies, and I've always created a 2-year P&L. So you got to know your numbers. You got to know your playbook. It's kind of like I equate it to, let's say you get into a car, and let's say you're going up north to a cabin that you've rented. Are you just going to get in the car and drive somewhere and hopefully, like, you're like, I'm going to get to this cabin up north. I'm just going to get my car and drive. I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I'm just going to drive. That's what most people try to do when they start a business. That doesn't work. You're not going to get there. So what you do is you go to Google, you type in the address, and then Google gives you a route that you're going to try to follow to get there. Maybe there's some variations. Maybe a road closes and then it's, oh nope, you got to turn this way and go that way. It's the same thing with a P&L. Is you create a P&L that gives you the playbook, the road of how to get from zero to get to $1 million in revenue, 10 million in revenue, 20 million in revenue, right? That's what a P&L does that most people don't spend the time to actually put together. So I had that, and I knew where we would be in a year, in 2 years. And I knew how my marketing spend, like if I dialed up Facebook, I knew how that was going to cascade and affect every month after that. Because again, for us, I knew that if I spend $1 million a month on Facebook ads for us, that means it's going to affect the repurchase rates and the amount of repurchase that's going to happen. And that's going to exponentially start to grow once I get them into the funnel, assuming we have a good repurchase rate, right? Because my people aren't just buying once. They're buying either on subscription or they're coming back and buying 3 months supply, 6 months supply every couple months, right? And so that's what I knew once I finally got the ad to kick in January and we figured out the formula for ads, and then you're seeing the success of it, and then you're spending $1 million a month. That's when I knew. That was when I really knew, okay, we did it. Now we just have to continue to scale, manage cash flow, and keep going.
How much of the first, let's say, I don't know, 12, 18 months is just kind of, again, every business is going to be different, but just survive until you whether figure out the ads to be more profitable, or you catch a big break with a influencer or something like that, versus, obviously you're trying a bunch of different things and pressing your luck in one place or another.
I think there's phases of that. It doesn't just happen once. It actually happens multiple times in the the life cycle of your business. Okay. So early on, for the first year, we were wondering, okay, is this going to work? Like, are we onto something? Like, is this actually going to catch on? And, you wake up just hoping, like you have this dream of where you're trying to build to, and you're constantly working towards it and you're making progress, but you're still wondering, like, okay, is my retention, is my repurchase going to hit my forecast? That was every month I was looking for, like, great, we're getting new sales, but is my repurchase rate, is that actually increasing like I'm hoping it would, right? Because the last thing I'd want is you get new sales, but then your repurchase rate is terrible and nobody's buying again. That means there's something wrong. And so once we saw that was growing, like, okay, this is going good, great. And, that was definitely the whole first year was that. And then once we got over the hump and we figured out Facebook ads, we were efficient with it, then we were humming along really good. Now, this leads you to the next level of the problem. Now you get to this point and you're trying to scale. So now you're hiring more people. You're spending more money on Facebook. You're spending more money on all these other channels. And then you're looking at, like, okay, how do we diversify, add additional channels to the mix potentially, right? If it's even needed. I mean, certainly, like, I think they say up to maybe 50 million in revenue a year. You probably don't need too much past Facebook and Google, like, for the most part. If you're true e-commerce, you probably don't need to think too much more outside of that media mix. But, and obviously email. But I was still thinking like, okay, podcasts, what about some of these other sponsorships, just areas where I know we're going to meet our target customer. And then the woes of growing and scaling start to happen, right? Because then all of a sudden, when you go from being a $1 million a year business now to being a $10 million plus a year business, you have the same problems, but they're amplified. So now all of a sudden, you have to make sure you've got enough inventory for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, but it's amplified to such a greater level that now you got to spend like way more money on inventory than you ever thought possible. And if you make a mistake, you potentially put your business into a problem, right? And so there's multiple levels of it, man, you know? And when we went from 900K and then 14 million, like it was great. But then now we're at another level of like, we're still scaling, man. And it's hard. It's hard to scale once you get to that point, because then you're like, all right, now we're getting to this whole nother level of revenue. And then the next one is getting into retail this next year. And that's going to be a whole nother level of like, imagine getting a PO from Walmart, you know, for 4,500 stores all across the country. That's a challenge in itself. And so it never ends, man. It never ends.
Yeah. Is getting into retail something you think all e-commerce companies like end goal should be?
No.
If they're trying to scale as big.
Yeah, I don't. I think I mean, like, look at Athletic Greens, right? Athletic Greens isn't in retail. They're a great, or AG1, I should say. They're a great example of a brand that decided not to go into retail. I don't exactly understand why. I think they would have done amazing. But like Bloom, you know, Bloom Nutrition, he's a great example of like, they went into retail. They, instead of AG1 doing it, they went into retail, and now they're crushing it in retail and on Amazon. So it's not for everybody. You just have to know what you're trying to accomplish, what you're trying to achieve. And I knew for us that in this category of mouth tape and even nose strips, you're seeing I'm wearing a nose strip. I knew that, okay, yes, we're selling a commodity and my moat is my brand. So at some point, somebody's going to come along. They're going to see, and it's already happened, right? There's tons of copycats out there now who are trying to copy what we're doing, but they're all forgettable. Like, you see them and you can't even remember what they're named. But we are the largest mouth tape brand in the world. And on top of it, it's a brand you'll never forget. Nobody's going to beat that. So I knew for us, either way though, that this is a category that's never existed in retail. You can't buy mouth tape in retail right now. We will be the first. Hostage Tape will be the first mouth tape brand that you'll be able to buy in Walmart, Target, Costco, Sam's Club, all of it. And so I knew that that's where we need it, because it's a consumable, right? Why wouldn't you want to be able to just pick it up in Target? Like, I'm in Target every other day, I swear. So
we all are.
Why wouldn't we want to meet our customer where they are? You know? And I hear it all the time of the amount of people who maybe they learn about us and they didn't know who we were because they're not on Instagram or they're not on Facebook. So, and the amount of, I think Harley from Shopify talked about this when earlier in the year, he was saying there's so much opportunity and so many doors for wholesale that's such a large opportunity for brands, because that's where people are. That's where they're shopping. And I always think about, be where your customers are. I know our customer is in shopping in Target and Walmart and Costco and Sam Club every day. So that's where we need to be. Mm-hmm. That's how I think about it. And I know the market for us. This is we're going to be $1 billion company. We'll be $1 billion brand just purely because, again, 128 million households in the US and over 71% of them mouth breathe. That's a pretty large market for us that I know we'll get to, and we'll get a good sliver of that as we continue to grow here.
And then how do you think about your own website versus Amazon?
This
Where
is
to
a good
push
one. Yeah.
people?
Okay. So this is a debate that I'm sure many people have and many people think about. So this is how I thought about it. Again, you've heard me talk about we sell a commodity, and my moat is my brand. And I created this brand that inspires men, connects with them. It's cool. People buy hostage tape because it's cool. They like it. They like the branding. They think it's fun. And I knew that if I'm building a brand, I have to build the brand first. And I can't go on Amazon because brands don't start on Amazon. Products sell on Amazon. And we're not a product. We're a brand that sells an amazing product that solves a problem, but we're a brand. So I knew that we had to build a brand and create the demand so that people would then go to Amazon looking for hostage tape. So I knew that we would release on Amazon eventually, but just definitely not within the first year. And so I built the brand, built the company to then later go on to Amazon. So that would be my response is, are you building a brand or are you just selling products? And some people are just selling products, and that's okay. I don't know that that's the best way to be successful with starting an e-commerce brand, though. I think you really need to start a brand because people make decisions. Yes, there's people that make decisions on price, but majority of people still make emotional decisions on brand. And if you can find those people, connect with those people, then you have something that it's going to be successful. It can be successful, and you can build it and you can grow it from there. So I would always encourage people to think about whatever they're starting that way first. And then you can always go to Amazon later. Plus, too, you open yourself up, right? Once you go on Amazon, then everybody knows and sees it, and then they try to copy you, right? So by not going on Amazon, you're giving yourself a head start. So then when you have the head start, then you can release on Amazon, and then nobody can catch you.
Super interesting. And to that point of people who buy on just cost, it's like, do you even want that person to be your customer anyway? They're going to be...
They may not be
a
worth
much
it.
more difficult customer. Yeah, they're going
Right.
to want a refund or buy once and not buy again. And so, if you have a singular focus on the type of customer you want that wants to buy based off of the emotion rather than the price point.
There's a lot of people out there. There's a lot of consumers out there. You almost have to think about in an abundant way rather than a scarce way. I just think there's so many people out there. There's so much opportunity that I just got to do what I'm going to do. Find product market fit, create this brand, and it can happen.
Then how'd you get connected with Rogan, the UFC? You got some pretty big names on the hostage tape list nowadays. How'd that come about?
So the UFC story is a fun story. I like telling this one. So the UFC came to us and said, "Hey, we're really interested in working with you guys. We're thinking power slap because there's UFC and then there's the power slap. And if you don't know what power slap is, it's two guys stand in front of each other and they slap each other. It's wild, absolutely wild.
The craziest thing.
It's crazy, especially when you see it in person, like just the sound of the slap when you're sitting there and you're watching this. It's nuts. So when they reached out, and to be blunt, like I'm not even a UFC fan. I'd never watched UFC. Really wasn't into it. I mean, I'm a ball player. I was into ball sports, right? I was a football player, a golfer, a baseball player. I really wasn't into martial arts. And so when they came to us, I didn't really think like too much about it, but I'm like, okay, it's still the UFC though. They're one of the premier brands in the world. And what Dana White and Lorenzo and Hunter and those guys have done with it, it's just phenomenal. So I went, okay, let's fly out. So we went out there. We sat down with UFC, and when they pitched us, they actually said, all right, we changed our mind. We think you'd be great for UFC, not just Power Slap. So I'm like, yikes. Okay. Well, we're not Prime. We're not Manscaped. We're not like these top tier brands that are doing over 100 million a year yet. So I saw, I'm like, I'm going to warn you guys, like, this is where we're at. There's no way that I'm going to be able to afford this, because how I tend to look at things now, most people should, is when you're an early brand like this and you're thinking about marketing, you can't spend too much money and over leverage on awareness and just brand marketing. You have to be very focused on direct response. You just have to, right? You have to think about getting money in the door to be able to reinvest. And then once you get to a point where you have extra money, then you can start investing in awareness and brand. And so I was very focused on that. So a UFC play is not really direct response. It's very brand awareness. So I'm like, I just don't know that this fits. So when we went through the pitch, I realized, wow, we actually have access to UFC licensing. Like, I can market on Facebook and Google and everything, hostage tape with UFC marks. I went, that is valuable. That's worth it, because then it obviously lowers any sort of objection people have to the brand if they've never heard of it. And also it gives it legitimacy for them to go, oh, wow, the UFC is behind hostage tape. I mean, this must be serious then. This definitely isn't a joke or some crazy weird brand. This is for real. And then I knew that would give me any sort of advantage over any other competitor, as well as give me an advantage of getting into retail. That was the long-term idea. So I love the idea of it. And so later that night, this was the weekend of the Super Bowl, by the way. So later that night, they had Power Slap, and we'd never been to Power Slap before. So we go to Power Slap, and I'm there with my whole team. There was like 4 of us internally that we were all there, and we're always branded up. So we're there, we're sitting across eye level from where Dana sits, Lorenzo, Hunter, and then there's like this VIP of the moment seat that sit next to Dana. So at those events, somebody always is rotating up, sitting next to Dana for 5 minutes. And that night there was like Travis Scott was there, Charles Barkley was there, and then Tom Brady walked in. And me being the quarterback that I am, love Tom Brady. And I'm like, oh my God, Tom Brady just walked in. And he's sitting down next to Dana. And Dana has a great relationship with Tom. So then Tom's done. They come up and they say, okay, Alex, are you ready to meet Dana? And I'm like, yeah. So the event actually ended. And then we go into the back room. Tom had unfortunately left, so I didn't get a chance to actually meet him. But we go into the back VIP room where there's Dana, the Nelk boys are all there. This is a who's who of the internet when you go to these Power Slap events, because they purposely invite all of these VIP A-listers as well as VIP like YouTube influencer people of social media, because they know that they're gonna film this stuff, they're gonna stream it, it's gonna go everywhere. It's a brilliant marketing play, right?
Yeah.
Just like organic play. So we go into the back, and I walk up. Dana turns around, and he's got that big old smile on his face, and he goes, Lorenzo, hey, where's Lorenzo at? He goes, so Alex, we're sitting there, right? And Lorenzo bumps me, and he goes, look, the hostage tape guys are here. And I'm like, whoa. So then Lorenzo walks over, he shakes my hand, tells me how much he's loved hostage tape and he's been using it for months and how it's changed his life. Hunter walks up, shakes my hand, says the same thing. And then Dana's like, man, you guys are crushing it. I see you guys everywhere. And I even sent him stuff because, he does those. He used to do these like every Friday where somebody would send something and he would do a review or he'd talk about it. And I sent it to him hoping he would maybe talk about it. And he's like, oh yeah, you totally sent me some. And then also Gary Brecka is his health coach. And Gary's a huge hostage taper, and Gary talks about us, and he gives hostage tape out to like a lot of the people that he works with, like even like the Nelk boys. We were in the hotel a couple months ago in the gym, and Kyle and those guys, they walked up and were like, "Hey man, you're the hostage tape guy." I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Dude, Gary Brecka got me out of this stuff. I love it. Wear it every day."
That's incredible.
But so I'm standing there, and I've got UFC brass talking to me, and I'm thinking, a year and a half ago, hostage tape didn't exist, and now I'm standing here in front of these guys. Like, this is wild, right? And then a few months later, we negotiated the deal and we signed it, and then we became the official sleep aid of the UFC and Power Slap. And so now, yeah, we're the official sleep aid of UFC. And then when that happened, then the floodgates opened. Then all the NFL teams, Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL, everybody came out of the woodwork and was like, "Oh, hey, I saw that you signed with the UFC. Yeah, let's talk." So it's been a whirlwind of just developing relationships with all of these teams and leagues. I mean, we talked to Major League Baseball. We've talked to almost everybody. And as much as you'd love to like sign them all, you can't, because it's a lot of money just for awareness brand type plays. And extremely happy with the fact that we've got a brand as amazing as UFC that has a global reach for us that just meshes really well. And by the way, before I signed it, before we like actually did it, I did a post-purchase survey. I said, okay, if we do this, it sounds great. I love the idea of it, but is it actually going to resonate with our customers? And so we did a post-purchase survey where we said, are you a UFC fan? And I think it was like almost 75% of our customers said yes, they were a UFC fan. So that for me was, okay, this is going to be good. This is definitely in our wheelhouse.
Yeah,
versus like after I did that, then I went, okay, let's start testing more. I think I did WWE, and then I did NASCAR. I did all these others. And I'm like, okay, our target customer right now isn't a NASCAR fan. Okay, that's fine. It could just be like who we're attracting and targeting right now isn't them. But I know that majority NASCAR fans would definitely probably mouth breathe at night and would definitely use hostage tape. So then it was like, okay, at some point as we continue to get bigger, I know that's a channel that we could open up to. We just have to maybe adapt some of our marketing, some of our messaging to be able to attract those people, because I know they fit.
Yeah, man, that's an incredible story for multiple reasons, but I think the biggest is just goes to show how much can change. And you said a year and a half didn't exist until
Here's the thing, man. My mom taught me this when I was a kid. Love my mom. She taught me that you can do anything you want to do. You just have to be willing to work for it. And we're coming up on 3 years now. 3 years ago, hostage tape didn't exist. And we created it out of nothing. And now we're the largest brand in the world in this category. The most well-known. And Joe Rogan, you mentioned him earlier. What's cool about Joe, so we're a sponsor of the pod. Joe uses hostage tape. What's cool about that is, so there was one episode where he had a UFC fighter on, and they were talking about mouth tape. Like the UFC fighter was like, yeah, I wear mouth tape at night. And Joe goes, oh, are you wearing hostage tape? So to have somebody as big as Joe immediately think, oh, hostage tape. Like we're the de facto brand that comes to mind when you're thinking about mouth tape. You've reached a level, right, that everybody aspires to get their brand to, is that you're what people think of when you think of a category. And we have become that category leader that we just got to continue to keep making strides, keep making steps and then keep getting into retail and then continuing to push through.
That's absolutely incredible. I got 2 final questions for you, if that's all right. First one is, what is a early mistake that you made that other entrepreneurs can avoid, that can help them just steer clear of that?
Yeah. Well, I think I mentioned it earlier. It was, if you're developing a product, manufacturing a product, a consumer product, something like that, then you got to make sure you measure twice, cut once. Like, you're on top of all the details of it, so you don't make any mistakes on manufacturing, your inventory, all of that. So very early on, that was a mistake that I made, that I learned. So don't mess around with inventory at all. You got to be very, very on it with that and make sure you understand it.
Measure twice, count one, or cut
Measure
once.
twice, cut once, baby. Yep.
Perfect. Then actually, I have 2 more. They'll be quick. What position did you play in football? Let's see, against a couple jerseys back there.
So I was a quarterback.
Oh, nice. All right, lead the team.
I played arena football. So I didn't quite make it to the NFL. I made it to arena football. And when I made it there, I wanted to be the next Kurt Warner. And Kurt Warner was the Hall of Fame quarterback for the Rams. One of the most amazing Cinderella stories of all time. And if you don't know this story, it's amazing how this guy, he was a nobody, played 5 years in college, didn't start till his 5th year, till senior year, right, at a Division I AA school in Iowa. Nobody ever thought he was going to be anything, but he knew. He knew. He then went on and didn't go anywhere, didn't really catch on in the NFL. He actually went to Packers camp, and then he got cut. Like, he was in camp with Brett Favre, Steve Berline, and a couple other, and Ty Detmer, like a bunch of these like big time dudes who he was a nobody, right? And he ended up then playing arena football. And it was his time in arena football that he made a name for himself, and then got into camp with the Rams. And then famously, Trent Green goes down. Dick Vermeil says, I'm going to start. I'm sticking with Kurt. And everybody's like, who is this guy? He was a nobody. And then he won the MVP that year, I think. And then they won the Super Bowl, and it was the rest is history, you know? So like, it just doesn't get any better than literally being nobody and nobody ever thinking you were ever going to do anything. And then you become an NFL Hall of Fame quarterback.
Yeah, it does get better than that. Wasn't he like a grocery store manager or something like that?
Hy-Vee. Yeah. Okay. So back in, I think it was in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, there was a period where he couldn't catch on with the team, didn't make it in Green Bay. And so he worked at Hy-Vee. He was stocking shelves. Wow. And then he got contacted by Jim Foster. Jim Foster was the founder of the Arena Football League. And Jim was like, you got to come play for me for the Iowa Barnstormers. And so he didn't want to at first. He's like, I'm not going to go play arena football. That's a waste of my time. But then he realized, no, you know what? Playing something's better than nothing. It's still a chance. And so he went and then he played for Jim Foster with the Iowa Barnstormers.
Incredible. What team did you play for?
Too many. So I played for the Spokane Shock, is this jersey right here. Back in 2006, I was the quarterback for that team. That was the inaugural season of the Spokane Shock. And then I played for the Bakersfield Blitz. I've also played for the Tri-City Diesel, the Tulsa Talons. I was briefly with the Quad City Steam Whalers and the Omaha Beef. So
major rounds.
You make your rounds, man. When you're playing anything below like the NFL, Major League Baseball, all those, you're trying to keep playing. You're trying to get tape. You're trying to just get the opportunity, because you never know, right? It's like anything in life, any networking, anything. It's you could meet one person and it could change your life. So when you're playing ball, you could get in the right place at the right time, and the right guy sees you, and then it changes your life, and then you get an opportunity.
Yeah, no, love that shit. Kept going after it. I had a buddy who played in the ring league for a couple of years. He played for the Philadelphia Soul for a couple of years.
Yep, the Philly Soul. Yeah.
Yeah, and one other place. And so admire that. And then the final question is a question that I ask everybody, which is, what is your why? Why do you do what you do?
Why do I do what I do? I've always been an underdog. And I say, so the line that I told you earlier that my mom taught me, I say that to my kids all the time. I've always believed that I could do anything I wanted to do. If I was willing to work for it, I could do it. And when you're an underdog, you have to have that mentality, that you have to have this delusional optimism. I tell my team that all the time. Since the beginning of the company, I've had this delusional optimism that no matter what happens, I know we're going to make it, and I know we're going to be able to get there. And at every level of my life, I've always believed that, no, I can do it. I know I can. I'm going to get there. If I want it, I'm going to go after it, and I'm going to do it. I just got to be willing to work for it. And I've always lived by that. My success in football, I was never the guy. Nobody ever thought I was going to be the guy, but I always came out and they were like, I didn't see that coming. And then I became the guy. And then I got to the next level. Didn't think I'd be the guy. Then I became the guy. So every level of life has had that sort of adversity that you have to fight through and get through. And then it helps develop who you are. It helps you become who you're going to be, right? You have to go through difficult things in life to become, that man, that person, that thing that you want to become.
I love that underdog story. Everybody loves it. I'm from Philly myself, and we love a good underdog story there, of course.
Who doesn't,
and
right?
So we can all get behind. And so, Alex, I really, again, appreciate you coming on today. This was incredible. Audience is going to love it. If people are inspired by the conversation and want to reach out to you, are you on socials anywhere? And then also, where can they check out Hostage Tape if they want to buy something for themselves?
So we're on all the socials, Hostage Tape, right? You can go to hostagetape.com. Don't let bad sleep hold you hostage anymore, or your partner. And I've got my personal Alex Neist on all the socials as well.
Awesome. We'll have all those linked in the show notes. But Alex, again, appreciate you coming on. This was awesome, man.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.